Ow, 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 ow. Today we're going to add health bars and also damage numbers above the head of our units because right now we are targeting them with the spells and they are receiving the damage, but we don't really know when it is going to die. So that's not really great. We need to know when the unit is going to die. So that's why we're doing that today. So let's get to it. And we're gonna start with the health bar. So let's go create the widget first. I'm gonna go in my blueprints, unit, widgets, and create myself a new user interface widget blueprint, which I'm gonna name W_HP bar. Let's open that one. And here the first thing we're going to do is replace the canvas panel by an overlay. So right click, replace with the overlay. And then we're going to add the progress bar for the HP bar. So here we go. We have the progress bar right here. But since I already have one, I'm just going to paste it right there. So here are my values on the right. So I don't have any padding. For the style, I changed the background image to a tint that is a little bit darker than the default white tint that comes with the progress bar. Then in the progress, I set a default percent to be 0.5 just so we can see both colors at the same time. And then in the appearance, I changed the color to be a tint of red because it's for the HP, so it needs to be red. And that's it. So these are my settings. And now just to give us a better preview, I'm going to change the fill screen to custom right here. And I'm going to set the values to 60 and 10, which I think looks more like a health bar than what we had before. And now inside the progress bar, we're gonna add a scale box. So grab a scale box, drop it in the overlay. So here it is. I'm going to make it stretch on both sides and add 2 of padding. And finally, the last component we're gonna need is a text component to display how much HP is left to the unit. So we can drag the text component inside the scale box. But in my case, I already have one, so I'm just going to paste it here. So I have my text HP component right here. For the variables on the right, my padding is set to 5. My alignment is centered on both directions. I've set a default text, which is 25 out of 50, so we can see something in the screen. And then in the appearance, in the font, I've changed the outline setting to add a little bit of an outline. So 2 units outline around the text. And I've also set the shadow offset to 3 and 3 just to have a better effect. And I've also changed the shadow color to be black and the justification is center. So here we go. I have my text on my progress bar. And since we have the scale box as parent of the text, now the text adapts itself even if we are stretching the progress bar in any direction. So even though the progress bar can be like super long, super short, whatever, the text is always going to be adapting itself. So that's great. Okay, good. We're done with the designer. Now we can go in the graph. And here we're gonna replace these 3 default events by 2 new custom events. So here they are. I have my 2 new events right here. So I have the event underscore set unit with a variable input, which is the unit that we're gonna use for this HP bar. So at the beginning of the game, when we are creating the HP bar, we're gonna tell it, okay, use that unit every time we want to update it. Every time we want to update the progress bar, we're gonna use that unit and its HP. And then in the event update HP bar, well, that's where we're going to update the HP bar. So these are the 2 events we're gonna need for this widget. For the set unit, it's pretty straightforward. We just have to promote the unit to a variable, which I'm just gonna name a unit in this case. And then we probably want to update the HP bar right away as soon as the unit was updated. So I'm just going to also call the event update HP bar. And for the event that updates the HP bar, we have 2 things to update. We have to first update the text that is written on the HP bar because we have the current HP and maximum HP numbers that we have to update. And we also have to update the percent of our progress bar. And that's what we're gonna do right here. And to do that, we're gonna use the units data. So here we go. We have our units. We are getting the units data and inside them, we're gonna fetch the HP current and maximum. So now we know what we have to write on the text and for the percent. So first we're going to start with the text, and the first thing we have to do is to convert it to a string because we have to use the append node if we want to append both numbers together, and that's just available for a string. So here we go, we have the append string right here, which we are simply using the HP current slash HP maximum just to display the current amount of HP. And then for the percent is super simple. We just have to divide the HP current by the HP maximum, which is going to give us a percentage of HP that we can then feed to the progress bar. Here we go. So now we can compile and save this widget and we can go use it in the unit. So I'm going to go in my BP unit, open the blueprint, go in the viewport, and we're going to add the component right here. So let's add a new component, which is going to be a widget component that I'm going to name widget underscore HP bar. Here we go. So now on the right, I can select the widget class, which is the HP bar that we just created. So W underscore HP bar. Here we go. We have the HP bar on the screen. It's a little bit big though. So let's reduce its size to, let's say, 100 by 20, which looks a little bit more like a progress bar. So that's good, like a health bar. Great, but now it's on the floor, so let's move it above the head of the unit. So let's say 250 in the air. I think that makes sense. Now the unit has an HP bar above its head, so that's great. Okay, there's just one thing that we need to change now. It's the space of the widget. We don't want it to be in world space. We're gonna make it screen space, so it looks better in the game. We don't see it in the viewport, but that's not a problem. So good. Now we can go in the event graph in the begin play event just to initialize the progress bar right here. So we're gonna grab our widget HP bar and grab the user widget object that is inside the widget component. Then that widget object, we can cast it to the W HP bar, the widget that we just created, and then we can promote that into a variable that I named the HP bar because we're gonna use it multiple times to update it here and there in the code. So here we go, and then we just have to initialize it. So to initialize it, we're just going to set the unit. So event set unit passing itself because we are currently in the unit. So we can pass itself. And since I just want to make it a little bit cleaner, I'm just going to convert my cast to a pure cast, just like that. Here we go. Okay, good. Now the HP bar is initialized and we just have to update it. And there's actually just two places we need to do that. So the first place is in the unspell animation tile. So when the spell reached the tile and hit the enemy or the unit, we're just going to update the progress bar above the unit's head. So I'm just going to do it right here after the remove, I think. So as soon as the spell impacted the tile, we're just going to update the HP bar right here. So HP bar, call the event update HP bar. Here we go. I'm just going to connect it like here, right there. Here we go. So that's done. And the second place that we have to update the HP bar is inside the event graph. I'm going to go down right here in the event debug respawn because we are respawning the unit. We're going to set its current HP right here, and we're going to update the HP bar right after. So the HP bar is going to be back to full. Great. Now we can compile, close the unit, and go test in game to see if it works. Here we go. So now all my units have their HP bar above their heads with all their different HP values. So that's good. And now if I try to cast a spell on the units, it should update the HP bar when it receives damage. So here we go. It seems to work pretty fine. So that's good. And when I kill my unit, it should then respawn. So here we go. My HP is now 0 and it respawned and went back to 30. There we go. So now the units are dying and respawning, and we know when they are going to die. So that's good. But now it would be also nice to have damage numbers above the head of the unit, because right now it's not really the case, and that's not nice. So let's go at them. Okay, so for the numbers that appears above the unit's head, we're going to create another widget. So in the unit widget, create a new one. So user interface widget that I'm going to name W underscore animated number. Let's open it. And here, same thing. We're going to replace the canvas by an overlay, and then we're going to add a text component. So here is mine. I have my text underscore animated number right here. It's still red because it's still going to be about the HP. So on the right, we can see my values. So horizontal and vertical element, they are centered. The text is written 30 just to have a default value. And then it's bold, size 40, outline, a little bit of an outline, the same shadow offset, same shadow color, same justification. So everything's pretty much the same as my other text. Everything else didn't change. So good, we have our text inside our overlay, and this time we want to animate it. We want to make it move on the screen. So what we're going to do is create ourselves a new animation right here in the bottom left corner. So new animation, I'm going to name it anim underscore animated number. And then if we double click on it, it's going to open it in the timeline that we have just right here. We have the timeline window. It is hidden behind the compiler result, but here we go. We have the timeline. If we double click on it, here is the timeline of our new animation. Oh, and if you don't have that timeline window right here, you can always open it in the window drop down menu at the top. You have the timeline option right here. There we go. So now we can select the animation on the left, and we have to edit the widget's animation. So in this case, I'm going to start by reducing the length of the timeline. So I'm going to drag the thing to, let's say, 2 seconds. The animated number, the damage number is going to be visible 2 seconds on screen. I think that's good enough. And now it's time to decide what kind of animation we want for this number. Well, in my case, I'm just going to keep it simple. When the enemy, the unit gets hit, the number is going to appear, fade super fast, go up in the air, and then fade out. That's super simple. We can polish it in the future if we want to, but I think for now it's going to be good enough for our tests. So I'm going to select my text right here and go on the right. Now that my animation is selected right here in the bottom, so if I have my animation selected and my text selected, I can see that I can now add keyframes to a bunch of properties. So the color, the padding, the justification, the shadow color, offset, whatever. I can add keyframes to pretty much everything. And in this case, what we are interested in is the translation because we want to move the number. So let's add a keyframe to that one. So translation keyframe. Unreal creates us the track in the timeline. Right here, we have the transform track with the key in the translation. So here we go. And now what I'm going to do is move the text in the air. So I'm going to start by moving my scrubber here. I'm going to move it at 2 seconds. So at the end of my timeline. And then on the right, I can select the properties. So let's say transform, and I can change the value. So let's say minus 200 in Y. So the text is going to be higher up in the air. And now that I'm satisfied with that value, I can add a keyframe to it. And Unreal is going to create us the curve in the timeline. And now if I scrub, I can see that my text goes from the bottom to the top. And here we go. Zoom. Here we go. So we now have a text that goes up in the air. Great. And the other thing that I want to animate is the opacity. So here on the right, we have the render opacity. So we can add a keyframe to it. And actually, the first keyframe, I'm going to start it at 0. So it's going to be hidden by default. So you can write a 0 and create a keyframe. So now the text is hidden. And at the end also of the animation, it's going to be hidden. So let's save it to 0 and the key. So let's keep it to 0 and create another keyframe. So here we go. Now the text is always hidden, but now we want to make it visible at the beginning. So let's say at 0.25 seconds, it's going to be fully visible. So 1 and create a keyframe. So now at the beginning, it's going to fade in. Here we go. And now it starts fading out. But I think it starts to fade out way too fast. We should wait with its full visibility a little bit longer before fading it out. So let's say 1.25 right here. So it's going to be still 1. Change the value, add a keyframe. There we go. So now we have the text fading in, staying visible, going up, and then fading out at the end. Here we go. So now the animation is done, and we just have to play it. And to do that, we have to go in the graph. So let's go there. And here, let's delete the default event and create ourselves a new custom event. In my case, I have my event right here. So I named it event underscore play animated number animation, which is going to play the animation. And I'm also passing it a numbers because we want to show the number that is actually the number of damage or healing or things like that. So we want to update the number value. So that's why we are passing it an integer, which is the number that we want to display on the screen. And then we simply have to do a set text on the text animated number just to update the number that is written on it. So I'm going to drag my number and put it inside the set text. Here we go. And now I'm just going to expand the toText function just to check the always sign checkbox. That way it's always going to have a plus or a minus in front of the text. And I think it's going to be nice. If we have a healing, it's going to be plus something. And if it's damage, it's going to be minus something. So that's good. And now we just have to play the animation. So here on the left, we have the animated number, which is the animation we just created. So I'm just going to drag it inside the graph right here. And then we can simply do a play animation. And that's going to play the animation as simple as that. But in this case, I'd like to have a different playback speed per animation because if we spawn, let's say 10 animated number at the same time, it would be nice that they are not all at the same speed. So that's why I'm adding a random float in range right here, just so that all my numbers have different speed and it's going to make things a little bit more alive, I think. So perfect. Now let's compile and save this widget. We're done with it. And we can now go back in entry to create ourselves a new blueprint. Because what we're going to do is just spawn a new blueprint in the world. That blueprint is going to play the text animation and then destroy itself once the animation is completed. And then, yeah, every time we are hitting a unit or we want to display any other kind of animated number, we can simply spawn that object in the world. It's going to play the animation and destroy itself. So we don't have to manage anything if the blueprint is doing it for us. So that's why we're doing that. So blueprint class right here and the type actor, which I'm going to name VP underscore animated number. And now we can simply open it. And I'm going to go in the viewport to add a new widget component. So here it is. I'm going to name it widget underscore animated number. And then on the right, we are going to set a few properties. So we have the widget class, which is going to be the animated number that we just created. So here it is. It should be somewhere. Here we go. We have the 30 right here. What I'm gonna do is just move it a little bit in the air though. So let's say 200 in the air, I think. I think that's what I had, and it was pretty nice. So here we go, 200 in the air, and I'm just going to change the space from world to screen. Here we go, the same way we did for the progress bar. Now we can go in the graph just to play the animation and initialize everything. And for the logic, it's actually pretty simple. We just need the begin play, and we're gonna start it the same way we did for the progress bar for the HP bar. So we first get the component, get the user widget object, and then we cast it to the W underscore animated number to have access to the animation and also the event that plays that specific animation that we want to play. So we are casting it. And then there's a little something that is a little bit different. We have to bind ourselves to the animation finished because we want to know when the animation is done playing to be able to destroy this animated number widget, actually blueprint, because we're going to spawn the blueprint in the game. We're going to give it a number. We're going to say, okay, play this number. You can play whatever number you can play. You can take as much time as you need. Doesn't matter. Just play the animation for that number. Here are all the informations you need to know to live your life and then die afterwards. And that's the important part. We want to destroy the blueprint once it's done doing its job, because we don't want to spawn 10,000 animated numbers in the world and just keep them there, because that's going to be super expensive for no reason. So that's why once the animation is finished, we want to destroy the blueprint. So that's why we have to do a bind to animation finished. Then, okay, we have to tell it which animation we are looking for, because the widget can contain multiple animations. It can have as many animations as you want. So in this case, we are interested in the animation we created at the beginning. So animated number, because that's the only animation we have anyway. So let's use it. And then we have to create the event for the delegate, so the thing that is going to be called once the animation is completed. So here it is, I have my custom event, which I named onAnimationFinished. And once that event is called, we are simply going to destroy the actor. So the number is going to spawn, play the text is done, the actor is destroyed, and that's it. We don't have to think about it anymore. It's done. It's doing its job. We don't need to destroy it or anything. It's doing everything it needs by itself. So perfect. Oh, okay, we now have the logic that spawns and destroys the widget and things like that. Now we just have to play the animation for it to work. So here we go. I'm playing the animated number animation, which is the event that we created. And the last thing we have to do is to feed it a number, because we want to update the number that is written on the widget. So let's just promote that into a variable, which I'm just going to name a number. Here we go. So now we have a variable for it that we can update from everywhere. I'm just going to make it instance editable and also exposed on spawn, so it's easy to use. Perfect, now we can compile and save. We're done with this blueprint, and actually we should be able to test it right now. So let's go back in entry, and I'm going to take the BP animated number. It's completely standalone, so I can just drop them in the world, so I can place as many as I want. And then I can go on the right, select my animated numbers, and write different numbers in the number value. So here we go. I can have that number here. I can have a minus number right there. It doesn't really matter. It's just a test. So here we go. I have a few numbers. And now if I press play, I should now see all those numbers on the screen. Here we go. It's so nice. And then they play their animation and then destroys themselves. And if we want to check if the destroy actually works, we can see on the right here, I have 122 actors in the level when I press play. So 122. And then it goes back down to 117 once all the animations are completed. So here we go, they all destroying themselves. So great, we don't have to think about them anymore, because they do their job and then kill themselves. That's perfect. Okay, I'm just going to delete all those animated numbers from the level, because we're going to spawn them inside the unit, and that's what we have to do now. So let's go back in the BP unit to do that. And as I said, it's super simple to do. We just have to go back inside the function onSpell animation, hit tile. Here is the place we are updating the HP bar, and at the same time, we're just going to spawn the animated number. So let's go with the spawn actor from class. Here it is. The class is going to be the BP animated number right there, BP animated number. For the spawn transform, we're going to spawn it above the head of the unit. So I'm just going to split it and do a get actor location to have the position of the unit. So there we go. And the last thing we need is the number right here. So what we're going to do is just take the amount of damage that the spell does to the unit. So let's grab this, and then we can just paste it right there, modifier HP, pass it to the number, and then we can simply attach it right after the update of the progress bar, because we are going to update the HP bar and also spawn the number at the same time. Here we go. So now we can compile, save, and go see how it looks in the game. So here I have 3 units on the ground, and I'm just going going to try to attack them. Okay, we can see the damage numbers above their head, so that's not too bad. What if I try another spell that do a different damage? So let's say that one. Here we go, -4, 3, 4, 4, 3, 4. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. But the numbers are behind the HP bar. That's not great. So we have to fix that first. And also there's another thing that I'd like to fix is, let's say if I select the chicken right here and I use a spell that doesn't heal or damage the unit, it still writes 0 above the unit's head. So that's not good. We should only write a number if there's a number to write. We don't want to write 0. That's not a good number. So let's go fix that also. So let's go fix those two things and then we're gonna be done with today's video. So let's go in the BP animated number to fix the sorting order first. And here, if you select your widget animated number component on the left, you can see in the properties on the right, we have the layers category, and inside the layers category, there is the layer Z order, which gives us the order of all of our widget in the game. So it lets us organize them, and the default values is -100. So if we write a bigger number than this, so for example, -95, the widget is going to have a bigger priority over all the other widgets that still are at -100 because it's the default value. I don't know why they started at -100, doesn't matter. But in this case, since we wanted the animated number to have the priority over the HP bar, we're just going to make it -99, just so it doesn't mess up a bunch of other things if there is a bunch of other priorities that I'm not aware of. But for now, just let's say it's going to be -99, so it's bigger than -100, so it's going to have priority. But in the version that I currently have, so it's for the 25, there's a little bug. It seems with the shared layer name, the property doesn't work until you change the shared layer name. For some reason, you have to go at the end of the shared layer name right now and add a 1. So it's widget component screen layer 1. That's the name of the property for some reason. I don't know if they fix that in a future version, but in for the 25, that's what you have to do to make the property works. Okay, so changing those two variable right here on the right should have fixed the issue. So now we can compile, save this blueprint, and we're gonna go right away inside the BP unit just to fix the zeros that are appearing on the screen. And to do that, I'm just going to add a condition before doing all that stuff, because all of that is related to the damage number of the spell. So if the spell doesn't do any damage, we don't need to execute any of that code. So what I'm gonna do is just duplicate those things here, paste them there. And what we want to do is to make sure that the modifier HP is not equal to 0. So not equal 0, oops, not equal to 0. There we go. And we can just reconnect the branch just like that right here. So now we're not going to execute any of that code if the spell damage is equal to 0. Perfect. Now we should be able to compile, save, and it should conclude today's video. There we go. So let's test that real quick. I'm going to start with the chicken, with the run chicken run animation. We can see that it doesn't spawn any zeros above the chicken's head anymore. So that's awesome. And then for the damage number, I'm just going to select any other unit and cast the spell. And we can see that now the damage number appears right above the HP bar. So that's exactly what we wanted. Great. Good. So now we have this damage number that appears above the head of all the units. So we can now kill them, and it's way more fun now. Great. Okay, so that's going to conclude today's video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.